Hi everyone, I'm Kara from St. Joseph County Public Library, and today I'm going to be doing a storytelling for adults of the Juniper Tree from Grimm Brothers. This is one of the most gruesome fairy tales from Brothers Grimm, which is why it's so fun to tell. So let's begin. 2,000 years ago, or a very long time anyway, there lived a rich man with his beautiful wife. More than anything, they longed for a child, but no matter how much they prayed day and night, no child ever came. Outside their house, there was a garden, and in the center of that garden, there was a juniper tree. One winter's day, the woman stood under the juniper tree, peeling an apple, and she happened to cut her finger, and a drop of blood fell into the snow. Oh, she sighed, how I would love a child as red as blood and as white as snow. At that, her heart lifted, and she went into the house feeling that all would be well. 1 month passed, and the snow melted away. 2 months passed, and the grass turned green. 3 months passed, and flowers bloomed out of the earth. 4 months passed, and leaves grew on the twigs and trees, and the forest pressed together, and the birds sung sweetly in the air. 5 months passed, and the woman stood under the juniper tree, and her heart filled with joy. 6 months passed, and the fruit of the juniper tree grew heavy and firm, and the woman fell still. 7 months passed, and the woman ate so many berries from the juniper tree that she felt sick and sorrowful. On the 8th month, she went to her husband, weeping, and she said, "If I should die, bury me under the juniper tree." Comforted by his promise, she gave birth in the 9th month to a child as red as blood and as white as snow. Looking at her baby, her heart could not contain her joy, and she died. The husband buried her under the juniper tree as she had asked, weeping bitterly. A little time passed, and he still wept, though not as bitterly as before. A little more time passed, and he remarried. By his second wife, he had a daughter, but by his first wife, he'd had a son as red as blood and as white as snow. His second wife loved her daughter dearly, but when she looked at the boy, her heart twisted with hatred, because she knew that he would inherit his father's wealth, and she feared that her daughter would get nothing. At that, the devil got into her, so that anytime she saw him, she cuffed him and slapped him and made him go stand in a corner, so that he was so afraid he hardly dared to come home from school because he knew he would never get any peace. One day the woman was in the kitchen, and her daughter Marlene came in saying, "Mother, may I have an apple?" "Of course, my dear," said her mother, and she took an apple from the chest. The chest had a sharp iron lock. "Mother," Marlene said, "may my brother have an apple too?" Mention of the boy made the woman angry, but she contained herself, and she said, "Yes, when he comes home from school." At that moment, she looked out the window, and she saw the boy coming home on the road. The devil got into her, and she snatched the apple away from Marlene and said, "You're not going to have one before your brother does." She threw the apple in the chest and slammed the lid closed, and Marlene went up to her room. When the boy came in the kitchen, his mother said to him, "My son, would you like an apple?" But her eyes were fierce. "Mama, you look so angry," he said. "But yes, I'd like an apple." "Come this way, then," she said, and she led him over to the chest. "Go ahead, pick one for yourself. That's right. Lean in. The best ones are in the bag." And as he was leaning in, the devil got into her, and bam! She closed the lid, his head cut off, and rolled in among the apples. Suddenly she was very frightened. "Oh dear, what have I done?" she said. But maybe there's a way. She ran upstairs to her room and got a white handkerchief from her chest of drawers. She brought it back down, propped the boy up in a chair, set his head on his body, and tied the handkerchief around his neck so that nothing could be seen. Then she went into the kitchen and started boiling a pot of water. Marlene came back down. "Mother," she said, "my brother is sitting with an apple in his hand, but his face is so white. I asked him if I could have an apple, but He didn't answer me, and I was so frightened." "You go back and speak to him again," said her mother. "This time, if he doesn't answer you, slap his face." So Marlene went back to her brother. She said, "Brother, may I have an apple?" But he was still, and he didn't answer her. So she slapped his face, and his head flew off. Marlene was terrified. She ran back into to the kitchen, screaming, "Mama, I slapped my brother, and his head flew off!" And she cried and sobbed, and she could not be consoled. "Marlene, you bad girl," said her mother. "Well, there's nothing to be done about it now. Hush, we won't say a word. We'll chop up his body and put him into a stew." So she chopped up his body while Marlene wept and wept, and she put him into the pot of boiling water. Soon the father came home. He sat down at the table and looked around. "Where is my son?" he said. "Oh," said his wife, "he went to stay with his mother's family. He'll be away for a while." "I'm not happy about that," said the father. "He should have at least said goodbye." Then he began to eat. "Marlene," he said, "why are you crying? Your brother will be back." And he ate some more. "This is the best stew I've ever tasted," he said. "Give me some more. You aren't having any. I have a feeling this is all for me." And he ate the rest of the stew, every last scrap, and threw the bones under the table. Marlene went up to her room, got her best silk scarf from her chest of drawers, and came back down. She gathered up the bones and tied them up into the scarf. Then she went out and set them beneath the juniper tree. She had cried so much that her eyes had dried up, and she could only cry blood. Suddenly the juniper tree began to move. Its branches swayed back and forth like a person clapping hands. Then a gold mist rose from its branches like a flame, and in the center of that flame there appeared a beautiful bird. He flew up into the air, chirping and singing. Suddenly, Marlene felt happy as she had when her brother had still been alive, and she went back inside the house. The bird flew on, all the way to town, where he came to perch on the house of a goldsmith's house. And he began to sing. "My mother, she killed me. My father, he swallowed me. My sister, she buried my bones beneath the juniper tree. Coeat, coeat, you'll never see a prettier bird than me." The goldsmith stopped working in his workshop, and he had to run out and see what sort of bird was singing such a lovely song. He was in such a hurry to get out that he lost one of his shoes along the way, so that he stood out on the road with only one shoe, his leather apron, pincers in one hand, and his gold chain in the other. He looked up at the roof. The sun was so bright that he had to shade his eyes, and he said, "Bird, that's a lovely song you're singing. Will you sing it again?" "Oh, no," said the bird. "I don't sing twice for nothing. Give me that gold chain, and I'll sing again." "You can have it and welcome, but please sing that song again," he said. So the bird swooped down, and he snatched the gold chain in his right claw, and he swooped back up and he sang, "My mother, she killed me. My father, he swallowed me. My sister, she buried my bones beneath the juniper tree. Coeat, coeat, you'll never see a prettier bird than me." And he flew on until he came to perch on the roof of a shoemaker's house, and he began to sing. "My mother, she killed me. My father, he swallowed me. My sister, she buried my bones beneath the juniper tree. Coeat, coeat, you'll never see a prettier bird than me." The shoemaker heard the song, and he came out to see who had been singing it. He looked up at the roof. The sun was so bright he had to shade his eyes. And he said, "Bird, you have such a lovely voice. Then he ran back in his house to get his wife, his children, his apprentices, and the maid, and they all came out and stood on the street. The shoemaker said, "Will you sing that again for my family?" "Oh, no," said the bird. "I don't sing twice for nothing. Give me those little red shoes I see on your bench, and I'll sing again." The wife ran in to get the shoes. Then the bird swooped down and clutched the shoes in his left claw. And he began to sing, "My mother, she killed me. My father, he swallowed me. My sister, she buried my bones beneath the juniper tree. Coweet, coweet, you'll never see a prettier bird than me." And he flew away along the river until he came to a mill. And the mill made the sound clippity-clap, clippity-clap, clippity-clap. And the workers were working away at the millstone, going hick-hack, hick-hack, hick-hack. And the mill went clippity-clap, clippity-clap, clippity-clap. The bird perched on a tree just outside the mill, and he began to sing, "My mother, she killed me." One of the workers looked up. "My father, he swallowed me." Two more workers stopped working. "My sister, she buried my bones." Four workers put down their chisels and stopped to listen. "Beneath the juniper tree." Eight workers stopped. "Coweet, coweet, you'll never see." Four more workers stopped working. "A prettier bird than me." Finally, the last worker put down his chisel. He looked out at the bird and he said, "Bird, that is the most beautiful song I've ever heard. But I only heard the last line. Will you sing it for me again?" "Oh, no," said the bird. "I don't sing twice for nothing. Give me that millstone you're working on, and I'll sing again." "If it were just up to me, you'd have it like a shot," said the worker. "But—" "Oh, come on," said the others. "If he sings that song again, he can have the stone." So they took a long beam and wedged it under the stone and heaved it up. The bird flew down, put his neck through the hole in the stone, and then he flew back up, singing, "My mother, she killed me. My father, he swallowed me. My sister, she buried my bones beneath the juniper tree. Coweet, coweet, you'll never see a prettier bird than me." And he flew on home back to his father's house. There he perched on the roof. Inside, Father, Mother, and Marlene were all seating around the table. Father said, "I feel great. I feel better than I have in years." Mother said, "I do not. I don't feel well at all. I feel as if something terrible is about to happen." Marlene wept and wept. The bird flew from the roof to a branch on the juniper tree, and he began to sing, "My mother, she killed me." The mother clapped her hands over her ears and squeezed her eyes shut. Her head was roaring and lightning flashed and burned behind her ears. "My father, he swallowed me." "Well, will you look at that?" said the father. "I've never heard such a beautiful sound. The bird sings like an angel, the sun is shining, and the air smells like cinnamon. I'm going out to get a closer look." "No, don't," said his wife. "I feel as if something terrible was about to happen." "My sister, she buried my bones." Marlene wept and wept, but Father said again, "I'm going out to get a closer look." And he went out onto the grass. And the bird sang, "Beneath the juniper tree, coweet, coweet, you'll never see a prettier bird than me." And on the last note, he dropped the chain around Father's neck, and it fit as if it had been made for him. He went back into the house saying, "What a lovely bird, and look at this gold chain he gave me." The mother was too terrified to look. She began to shake, and her hat fell off and rolled into the corner. The bird began to sing again. "My mother, she killed me." Mother fell to the ground, scratching at the floor. "My father, My father, he swallowed me. She scratched and scratched, and she said, "Oh, I wish I were 1,000 feet under the earth so that I wouldn't have to hear that song." My sister, she buried my bones. Marlene looked up, wiped her eyes, and said, "I'm going outside to see if the bird will give me something." And she went out onto the grass. The bird sang, "Beneath the juniper tree," and he threw the little red shoes down at her feet. "Coeat, coeat, you'll never see a prettier bird than me." Marlene tried on the shoes, and they fit as if they had been made for her. She ran back into the house, and she said, "Mama, I was so sad when I went out, but look what the bird has given me, such lovely shoes." "No, no," said the mother, "I can't stand it. I feel as if the world were coming to an end. I can't stand it." And she ran outside onto the grass, and bam! The bird dropped the millstone on her head and crushed her to death. Father and Marlene had heard the crash, so they came out to see what had happened. Smoke and fire rose from that very spot, and then a breath of wind came and blew it all away. And standing there was little brother. He took Father in one hand and Marlene in the other, and they were all very happy, and they went inside to sit down at the table and eat their supper. Well, I hope that everyone enjoyed that, and stay tuned next week for another storytelling.